And we're trying 2 times to make one video. Welcome to the daily space weather. Looking at Sunspot 2748 here in colored magnetogram as it degrades. Now, we were calling for a B-class flare yesterday. That was the forecast. Still expecting a B-class flare sometime before this thing totally evaporates. 10.7 centimeter radial flux back up to 69. Let's look at more views. And here's the last 48 in 171 angstroms. Basically the full life cycle of that sunspot to date. I would also note that the North Pole coronal hole is super huge, and it's super bad news that the North solar polar field has lost its power. It looked like it was powering up, and indeed it was powering up, and now it's powered back down. So a huge coronal hole up there, as well as a diffuse coronal hole south of that sunspot that's now magnetically connecting to the Earth right at this moment. So earthquake folks, be prepared, be prepared. Have a plan, be an asset, not a liability in the event of a disaster, as we are still in an earthquake 7 magnitude drought. Here's the breakdown of that sunspot on solarham.net. Again, this is now an alpha class sunspot as it has lost magnetic power. The trailing umbra has almost entirely evaporated, and the leading umbra was small to begin with. So not a lot going on with the sunspot. If you're not familiar with our mission, check out smashomash.com/forum/mission, where we list what our purpose is. And also, thanks to our patrons, we're going to update you about the Hurricane Dorian situation as we see conflicting reports coming in from the Tropical Tidbits GFS model, as well as multiple software failures from multiple fronts. So thanks everybody who's been supporting us on Patreon, as it is our only source of revenue. If you'd like to donate to us via PayPal, we've got a link there also in the description. Or if you're in the market for CBDs, check out Hemp Lucid. We've got a link there also to the Hemp Lucid Spaced Out campaign, specifically formulated for our spaced out viewers. So please check that out. If you're in the market for CBDs, please buy them via our links. Let's look at the real-time solar wind as that coronal hole has just magnetically connected, as we see an ongoing 170-degree phi angle. Let me just refresh that real quickly. There we go. All right, just wanted to make sure that was fully refreshed. There we go. We see that ongoing 180-degree phi angle there. An indication that that southern coronal hole has connected. At the same time, solar wind density pretty low, 2.55 protons per cubic centimeter. Solar wind speed just recently ramped down to 486 kilometers per second. We apologize for running so late on this video, as again there were multiple software failures. Not particularly anybody's fault, especially not ours. The ACE data does line up with the Discover there, and again 10.7 centimeter radial flux up to 69. And we've created a little visual here, drawn in this orange line. That's the 70 solar flux units level. And as I just wanted to note the double bottom here in the way up into cycle 24's maximum, and we see a multiple bottom here, which we've just come off of, and we're right basically on the bottom of this line here at 69 solar flux units. So solar minimum conditions continue, but not as minimum as they've been, not as low levels of 10.7 centimeter radial flux as they've been. Again, keep in mind, super important that that North Pole coronal hole has grown and the North Pole magnetic field has weakened. Back to this, there's the predicted values. We see we are above the predicted values, but solar minimum, there's a reason why solar minima are associated with things like disasters. Thanks for attempting to understand atmospheric physics. Welcome to the Neo-Renaissance, and by the way, it is National Disaster Preparedness Month, so check out the links we have in the description also to places like weather.gov, fall safety. Lots of infographics and other interesting resources there, which may give you good ideas, or may give you bad ideas. I don't know. Check it out. And here's magnetosphere movies. First looking at the density, which again is pretty low. Diffuse solar wind coming in there. Density is, around 3 protons right now, so pretty low as it hits the magnetosphere for you new viewers out there, and thanks new subscribers, donors, etc. For you new folks, remember, light colors are low density. Next, we'll look at pressure. And we do see this ramp down at the end. Let's get the full 4 hours. Last couple hours, we should see a ramp down there as the solar wind speed dropped off a little bit. There is some coronal mass ejecta, which looks like it's headed toward the Earth. We're going to cover that momentarily, so stay tuned, as there's a lot of stuff, especially extremely in-depth coverage of Dorian, what it's been doing and what it's about to do. And patrons, that graphic we put on Patreon, it's a screenshot, so I didn't make it up. And we'll talk all about the rainfall totals that are coming in. Here's the ground geospace magnetic perturbations. Delta B, in other words, changes in the Earth's B field. And we see some significant stuff going on there, despite not a lot going on in the solar wind. So straight magnetic perturbations coming out of magnetism itself. KP index holding steady at 3 for the last 9 hours. Ionosphere movies. Here's the last 6 hours of Ionosphere. And it's looking pretty wobbly, folks. Pretty wobbly. Let's advance it to the latest image. Looks like through 10 o'clock UT, as we are very late making this video. Sorry about that for you earliest viewers. Ionosphere looking a little bit wobbly, not all that anomalous in terms of ongoing charge. Looking pretty normal on the day and nighttime sides there. A little on the charged side, from the way I see it. Again, we haven't seen any X-ray flares. I still would expect to see a B-class flare before Sunspot 2748 fully evaporates. Electron flux is quite high, and we do see charging hazards, mainly in the Tropic of Capricorn. There's the charging hazards. And again, there's the electron flux. Pretty high levels there, and holding pretty steady despite going past midnight satellite time. So pretty soaring electron levels there. Expect GPS errors. Milky Way galaxy team for the win. There's where stuff is in the solar system. As we see Mercury, Venus, Mars, and the Sun all in the same line there. There's where stuff will be in 7 days. And this time I only had to click 8 times to get 7 days. Here's a view from SOHO's C3 coronagraph. Again, we have a bit of a pileup going on out there. And there is some ejecta headed toward the Earth, but it's only a bit of diffuse ejecta. We'll show you it on stereo A in a moment. Again, this is from SOHO, the LASCO C3. We do see the GOES 15 magnetometer offline here, as the blue line has vanished. And it's going to be a fairly stable magnetic environment, actually, folks. Here's the Gong 2. And we see several days here until we'll be back on the southern polarized portion of the current sheet here, shown in red. And it's going to be pretty smooth sailing. Just keep in mind this can change without warning. As giant magnets, giant magnets can change without warning, folks. That's why we get a sunspot sometimes just poof before you can even forecast it, although I usually forecast it. Keep in mind the data, 1 hour and 38 minutes old, is taken from about 50 ground magnetometers, as well as magnetometers out here on stereo A and out here on stereo B. And let's move on to more stuff. Here's the view from stereo A, and we do see some ejecta. So if you look out here, the Earth would be out in this direction from stereo A's perspective. And we do see some ejecta headed down the pike toward Earth, which came out just recently, actually, in the past 12 hours. Not a lot of ejecta, but it is going to explain some variations in the solar wind density and speed in the upcoming 2 days. So in about 2 days, this stuff will hit home in a very realistic way, and in some cases, a very relativistic way. If that joke makes sense to you, please leave a comment. Hey, physics nerds, leave a comment. There's what's going on above my head, and we got to move on because there's a lot of stuff to cover. We see earthquakes coming in since the last attempt at making this video. Let's do the list of the last 24 hours. We see a deep quake in Peru. Heads up western South America. and every place else with earthquake risk, as we see earthquakes in certain spots here around deep quakes in the past, such as Romania. Here's a deep quake at Romania, also 4.6 there, 4.8 at Afghanistan, also a deep quake there, 206 kilometers. Shout out if you're watching this video from Afghanistan. Has a 5.0 in Tonga. That one at the surface, and as I stated in the last time I was trying to make this video, that's not a relaxation of your woes, as another quake has come in the past few minutes. Here's a 4.5 in New Zealand. That one is at depth. Heads up there for a larger quake. Here's another deep quake. This one in Afghanistan also. 4.5 magnitude. Here's a 4.2 at Tajikistan. That one closer to the surface. Here's a 5.1 at New Zealand. Check out the location of this one, right in the middle of a lake, Lake Taupo. Earthquake risk not expiring, folks. Earthquake risk staying in effect. Coronal hole magnetic connection, and boom. Deep quakes galore, acting like a tidal effect, preceding the magnetic connection, and, surface quakes now in the spots where you see deep quakes. So there you go. Largest quake of the past 24 hours just came in, a 5.7 at Tonga. Is it divine providence that's causing programs to crash? Nope, it's just bad code. Now, let's get into Dorian, and let's get pretty in-depth into Dorian here. I'm going to have to migrate for this one. All right, I apologize for the delay. Now, we are looking at the flight level 24,000, otherwise a jet stream. Here's Dorian from the jet stream view, folks. This is not good news for the southeast U.S. This is an indicating jet stream level input, and this is what you don't want to see. All right, this is not what you want to see. Here's the surface winds. I'm going to let this play through. This is the GFS model forecast, courtesy windy.com. Let's play this through and show what's going to happen in the next week. And it's not good for the south. Now again, this is just the winds. And those are probably about 45 knot winds just off the coast there. And this thing is just going to ride the coast. I mean, there's nothing else for it to do. It's surrounded by dry mass of air. It has only one way to go. The water north of it is fairly warm. There is some cold water off of North Carolina, which will help to weaken this thing, which is probably what's happening right about there in the model. But you can see there's going to be heavy winds that are going to be very close to hurricane force winds riding all the way up the coast. So massive beach erosion, and still looking like you're going to see about 20 inches of rain in all these spots. Finally, it looks like, according to the GFS model, the heavy winds are going to be right off of Virginia Beach Friday night. So Friday at about 10 p.m., it's finally going to move off the coast there, right off of Virginia Beach. Still, it's going to do some damage to Atlantic City, according to this model. And it's going to remain strengthened because, again, these are the surface winds, but the forecast for the upper level winds, here's flight level 24,000, you still see an input up there, and that is bad news, folks. That means this thing is going to stay strong throughout this whole process. Here's a National Weather Service, weather.gov. Please heed your local warnings. If anybody tells you to evacuate, please evacuate. Don't be standing in waist-deep ocean water downtown. There's nothing cool about it. There's a lot of deadly stuff about it. So, be reasonable. Looks like the Bahamas are still getting hit. Shout out to the Bahamas. We hope things are back to normal as soon as possible down there, as it's going to take a while to rebuild after the historic level of destruction from this loitering storm. And it's basically going to continue to loiter, folks. I mean, that model is consistent with the way I see it. Stay tuned for more Dorian stuff, but first, volcano rundown. Shivaluch, still exploding, producing an 18,000-foot plume. Mount Aso, 6,000-foot plume there. Dacono, volcanic ash last reported to 5,000 feet. Popocatépetl dissipated. Fuego dissipated. Revenador dissipated. Sabancaya still exploding, 24,000-foot ash plume there, and Ubinas producing an isolated cloud. Let's get back to Dorian real quick. Here's Null School. This is what we use to look at the jet stream there, and you can see that jet stream input, not a good sign. Here's the Western World jet stream. Let that play for a minute. Extremely meridional flow on both hemispheres. And here's the East. All kinds of meridional flow, doubled up, tripled up jet streams, massive folds in the jet stream currents. Moving on. Here's the AccuWeather Doppler radar of Dorian, and it is a mess. I mean, that's what you call a large thunderstorm, I'd say, folks. What do you think? Almost perfectly stationary right now. This low is going to ride right up the coast, and those clouds are going to follow it. We'll show you more. Here's the NASA GOES shortwave radar loop. Let me zoom it out so you can see the time date stamps. There you go. We use this to get a visual representation of what the clouds look like when it's dark, when we usually make these videos, although now it's light. We apologize for the delay. Here's the water vapor map. And you see all that dry mass of air around there. It is helping to weaken the storm. The dry mass of air shown in like these orange colors. That's going to help weaken the storm. Unfortunately, this ridge is not going to push far enough down in a southeasterly direction to push this thing out to sea. So a lot of this rain is going to just ride right up the coast, and there's going to be massive destruction. Again, if you're told to evacuate, please do. And here's a zoom out of that situation, and you can see there's only one path for this storm to take. There's largely warm water to the north of it. There are some pockets of cold water, and that's a good thing. That will help to weaken it also, although it is being corralled by this dry air. If the jet stream would push down a little bit farther to the southeast, this thing would get pushed out to sea, and it would spare these areas 20 inches of rain. Now, we did experience some failures in the Tropical Tidbits forecast here. It looks like it's back online now. So a few minutes ago, we could not get this forecast to show. It looks like there is a slight reduction in the amount of flooding, but South Carolina is really going to get pummeled, and perhaps that cold water is going to cause us to weaken a little bit. This looks like a more rational model now. Again, this is still the GFS model, and we're looking at total accumulated precipitation. So again, it looks like right around midnight Saturday. Let's move that a little farther ahead. To looks like around. Well, there's going to be rain bands trailing that thing anyway. So anyway, there's the forecast through Friday night, when it looks like it's going to move offshore. By then, there still will be some rain hanging around after that, according to this model. Again, still looking for 20 inches of rain in coastal South Carolina. And here are the sea surface temperatures. This is the only other main factor here in the strengthening and weakening of this storm. Other models showed this as anomalously cool off the coast of North Carolina in this area around where my pointer is. So, you know, the models are agreeing with what we've been saying for days, so cheers. And stay tuned for another video coming out soon, and stay tuned for one bonus section. And it's the extreme close-up of Sunspot 2748. This is just today's data, and we do see some other activity kicking off also. If you look at the colorized magnetogram, you can see some other magnetically organized locations. We're out of here. We got to get the video up before we're old and gray. So remember, when you're staring at the sun, don't drink. If you drink, stare at the sun anyway, just don't drive. And since it'll never be now again, don't forget your one up. And may the solar wind be at your back and the atherosclerosis absent from your veins.